I just want to talk about this idea of Japanese Sonic and classic US Sonic or different entities, which I say is no. People are like, ooh, the Dr. Kintobor backstory. That isn't even canon to the games. And they're like, oh, they made Sonic like a superhero in the US. They literally made him like a superhero in Japan too. The Sonic manga, where Nicky, the hedgehog that lives with his family, turns into Sonic the Hedgehog when danger arrives. Doesn't that sound like Spider Man to you? Also, Japanese Sonic and USA Sonic are not that different. I would say the only difference is Japanese Sonic is a little more mean spirited than USA Sonic, but that's it. Also, I would like to address people saying, oh, the USA, the America made up this idea of Sonic being a Bart Simpson type character. He was always a Bart Simpson type character in Japan. The OVA literally shows his personality. The OVA, written by Japanese people. So, yeah, there is barely a difference. Also, people misinterpreted the box art of the US Sonic games as a mohawk. The mohawk only existed in the US cartoons, not the actual games. There is artwork of Rick Martin drawing USA Sonic in facing the front, and also people animating the box art for Sonic to face the front. He has no mohawk anywhere. Only the cartoons made that up to make it cheaper to animate Sonic spikes. Also, this idea about Dr. Robotnik and Eggman, people saying, ooh, well, they changed Eggman's name to Robotnik because it sounded cooler, but Robotnik sounds just as ridiculous. Well, it doesn't matter if it sounds ridiculous. Lore is lore. It was written by Sega of America, so it's Sega of America. Sega Japan doesn't know what it's doing. The Sonic manga made Eggman destroy a whole forest just so he could buy the world's supply of eggs in the Sonic manga. I could you not. So yeah, it's not just US or JP is ridiculous. 90 Sonic is kind of ridiculous. I'm not here to make fun of USA Sonic or JP Sonic, but there is barely a difference. Barely. People have this idea because they grew up with the 2000 Sonic games, 2010 Sonic games. People have this idea of Japanese Sonic being different from American Sonic. You wanna know what I say to that? That's stupid. Funny enough, the creator of Sonic as a character liked most of the US stuff. Crazy, huh? Also, people say Spinball isn't canon. Yes, it is. In the Japanese story, it says Eggman's on another planet called Mobius, so Sonic and Tails have to leave the planet Earth to pursue him on the planet Mobius. It isn't accurate to Origins, but whatever, Origins is Origins. It wasn't just Japanese Sonic and American Sonic are different. No, they're barely different. I hate that idea of GP and American are different. No, they're not different. They're barely different. Also, who thought of the idea of making Tails brown? That's my only gripe with the US Sonic. Making Tails brown? Whoever thought of that needs to get out. I get they sent the early brown concept art, but Sonic 2 was out by the time SatAM was getting ready to air. They could have just said, hey, look, the box, this isn't accurate to the box art. Hey guys, we're gonna have to delay SatAM for a little bit. If they delayed SatAM to 1990, late 1994, the show would have been better. It would have actually matched the games. Oh my god. It would have added Amy, Knuckles, and an accurate portrayal of Eggman. But those are my gripes with the US. Let me tell you my gripes with Japan. Whose idea was it to make Sonic a Spider-Man knockoff in the manga? No, really. Peter Parker, Nikki, Sonic the Hedgehog, Spider-Man. What the heck? Nikki is a little boy that lives with his family. People to shit on the USA version of Sonic, even though there's barely a difference. And no, I'm not TV shows and movies wise, JP and US are very different. But like game manuals, I already know you guys don't read the game manuals. Also, people complain about that one tidbit of Sonic wanting to show off, but Sonic letting him do his own thing in the JP version. Guys, just because it describes it in a little bit more detail, you guys are over exaggerating it. He's not like, let me show off. He's like, let me show him a few stuff. Also, if it's licensed by Sega of America, who cares? Sega is Sega. People don't read the JP versions of Mario and American Mario, even though they're more different than JP and US. Right? In the American lore, Peach and Mario are friends, but in the Japanese lore, they're dating. I bet you didn't know that. But this is whole divide of classic Japan and classic USA is stupid. I personally like the USA art, but the Japanese lore. Personally, I don't like the USA lore or the Japanese artwork. But Toei Sonic is peak. Also, whose idea? Why do people get this idea in their head about, oh, Sonic in America, he says radical and tubular and he has no person. But he has more personality in the US than he does in Japan. By that I mean American Sonic looks like he would fuck you up. JP Sonic would look like he would give you a hug and share a beer. But either way, these are the same characters described in different ways. JP Sonic is a little more mean-spirited, but American Sonic did have personality in the shows he did. Like that one scene in Sad where he fights out his uncle Chuck was roboticized. He wasn't like, oh man, that sucks. Oh well, I guess I gotta beat you up. He was crying genuine tears. No, also, how did the US? Why did the USA do this? They made Amy described as Princess Sally from the cartoons, and they said people would recognize Sally. Who is the kids would be like, "Who's Amy?" But it's called introducing a character. What did they be? If they did that like to Sonic, it'd be like, "Who's Sonic? Make a Mario." Like what? I never got that. And I'm a person that grew up with 2010 Sonic. I know. I'm a baby. You might be saying, "Oh, you don't know what it's like. Oh, you weren't born around that time." But I don't need to be born around that time to know what Sonic is like. You don't need to be born in a certain time period. Also, how are you gonna say that when you look how Sonic art is literally, you can literally see it. It's based on the USA Sonic box art from the early 90s. You can see it. Also, this idea of also doesn't Sonic 3 literally use the US Sonic design? With the smaller but more angry eyes with the smirk. Yeah. So you guys gotta get your facts straight. Cause all that bullshit you guys say about US Sonic it's different from JP. What are you like trying to say? No, they're not. They are clearly the same entity. Also, yeah, modern Sonic and classic Sonic has very different personalities. Classic Sonic is a troublemaker that does what he wants. Modern Sonic, he does what he wants, but it's always for a good reason and not bad intentions. Classic Sonic kind of messes up a lot because he's not a good guy, neither is he a bad guy. He's kind of just does what he wants. He was kind of like the original Shadow. Also, I swear, so many people say this bullshit about American Sonic and Japanese Sonic having different personalities. You wanna know what I say? They don't. I know I just went into detail, but I want to talk more about that topic since the video's title is that. They also messed up in the area where Dr. Kentobor's origin story. Like, but how are you gonna say that? Well, the US lore and the Japanese lore were so different. It's obviously non canon. Japanese manga Eggman was a policeman that turns into Eggman as his secondary persona. It sounds a lot like Spider Man when you guys describe US Sonic to be the superhero with his origin story. Mm. So yeah, USA, Japanese, USA Classic Sonic and Japanese Classic Sonic aren't that different. They're barely different. They're also literally the same character. And you know what? Yeah, I mix USA lore and JP lore together. Because the 1993 Sonic cards are classic. They're considered part of the classic era, so I do consider them part of that. Where Sonic was an orphan raised by the animals in the forest, moving his way all the way to Dr. Kentobor's lab. Dr. Kentobor Robotnik, where he causes an accident to happen where he turns into Eggman. Because I truly believe Eggman used to be a good person. I consider the Sonic comic that was used to promote the game as canon. I consider it canon in most USA and Japanese media. Sonic is an orphan on Christmas Island raised by the animals from the forest. I mix USA lore and JP lore together. If you argue in the comments saying which one is better, I don't know what to tell you. Because they're clearly the same entity. Also, the fact that people even say they're different entities sometimes is stupid. Also, I want to talk about Generations Classic Sonic. The CGI model was perfect. It mixes JP Classic Sonic details with USA Classic Sonic details. Like the butt brow, the one spike on top of his head not being raised. They just had some details from US and JP. But the in-game model is booty cheeks, not gonna lie. Like, what did they do to him? He can't talk anymore. He could talk in the Japanese and USA lore. So can the Flickies and all the other animals Sonic talks to. All of them talked. Like, what is this corporate bullshit? Like, they keep trying to push this idea of classic Sonic being the cuter equivalent to modern Sonic. It should be the opposite. Classic Sonic was like a metaphor for the 90s because pollution in the early 90s started rising and rising. And they wanted to make a game that sends a message like, hey, don't pollute. You know? None of this. This is before Dark Gaia, Solaris, and the end came. They just wanted to make a game talking about pollution and how we need to save the environment. But as the games keep on going and going, they kept adding on, adding on. Also, the fact that people compare USA Sonic and JP Sonic just makes me sad. Also, we need to stop this idea of, oh, Japan equals better. Yeah, I just started talking about that a while ago, but Sonic and the Blade of Courage is not better than IDW. Yeah, I know, shocker. But it's not though, just because it's Japanese. Also, this idea of this idea of JP equals better needs to stop. Sonic is always going to be whatever the creators want them to do. It doesn't even matter because the next game's going to be about pollution, the next game's going to be like Greek mythology, like Unleash, and then the next game is going to be about sci-fi, and then the next game is about water monsters. The next Sonic game is probably going to be about dinosaurs. Or it's going to be about aliens. This idea of JP versus US needs to stop. Classic Sonic is classic Sonic. Also, I don't like what they did with Santiago. They made him look like Santiago. I don't like that. That's why when I play Gens on my computer, I used the Show-In Classic Sonic mod. It actually makes him look like Classic Sonic, US and JP. He has the butt brow. He also gets rid of the butt brow, and he looks like Japanese. And he looks like US. That just shows you how USA Sonic and JP Sonic aren't that different. And people that compare them haven't done the research and they just watch YouTube videos on Sonic. That literally just shows you. They don't do the research and they just watch power scalers that don't even research and just use headcanon for their idea of what Sonic is. And you know what? Classic Sonic and modern Sonic are different. Classic Sonic takes the events of the game serious, while modern doesn't. Modern thinks everything's a joke because he already experienced everything. He experienced water monsters, gods. He thinks he's unstoppable until something shows him, hey, you ain't that powerful, and then he starts getting serious. JP Sonic classic Sonic has been serious since the start. USA and JP Sonic art, it shows him having a determined face. His face was never cocky, but it was like, bring on your hardest challenge. I'll get it done in 5 seconds. JP Sonic is a little cocky, but American Sonic isn't that cocky. It's just he makes cocky faces. And you know what? Don't let people tell you JP Sonic and USA Sonic are different, because they're not that different. And they haven't done their research and they just read Archie Sonic comics. So, this will be the end.